Peace, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of On Tilt, the state of Black mental health and policing in America. I'm Julius, and I'm here with Miss Dannielle Brown. How you doing, Miss Dannielle?
I am doing wonderful. I am feeling good. It's a difference when you have protein in your system.
I can tell. I see you glowing. You got a glow today.
I do. I didn't know how much food impacts your skin and your mood.
Mm,
I'm thinking I was doing well without it, but there is a difference being on the other side of it.
mm. Well, you are 50 years young. You had
Yes.
an amazing birthday celebration. How are you feeling now?
I feel wonderful. I went roller skating. you know, and I did pretty well. I was more afraid of falling. So I told my friends, I said, we're going to do this again this weekend because I'm here in DC. And I said, I'm going to go to Dick's and get me the, I don't care. People not going to know what's underneath my clothes. Little wrist pad and elbow pad. And I'm gonna let loose a little bit more because I used to roller skate. I wasn't really good at it, but I could crisscross and hold my own. So I want to get back to that
I know
before I fall.
I saw the video. You were like going, backwards and spinning around and stuff. I saw you moving.
I was.
And you had another really big monumental thing that happened as well. You want to tell us about that?
The Marquis Jaylen Brown Foundation has wings. And I didn't realize how important it was for me to be the air beneath the wings. And, it clicked. And I always told people I knew I was coming off the hunger strike when two things national attention or the foundation, but I needed to hear from God. I needed to know my when. And going into the hospital was the most scariest thing ever you know, um, and having passed out, and I tell people I went to the edge, you know, and I could, you're in and out of your consciousness. I could feel myself reaching for Jaylen's hand. And I tell people it was an out of body experience because I literally was pushed back. And then my next vivid conscious was Jamal catching me. And so I knew at that particular time, my spirit said, it's not your time yet. It's time now to embrace your next destiny that I'm leading you to. And that is the foundation.
Wow. Wow. We had an amazing episode last week.
We
Just being
did.
able to talk about your foundation. Tell the people again where they can go and learn more if they weren't with us last week.
Yes. Please go to mjbfoundation.net. mjbfoundation.net. We got Q codes there. We got, if you go to the website, Marcus Jaylen Brown Facebook page or Instagram page, there's Q codes there you can tap into with a phone or anything and learn all about our program. And we're excited. I'm not going to take up too much time on this because I know we usually go into our moment of silence. So I'm just say, hey, thank you, love you all. We got an
Mhm.
exciting show today.
Yes, yes, we appreciate you, Miss Danielle. So before we get into it, we have an amazing guest with us today. Somebody who is also doing the work, super passionate, very influential, and is just with the people. Genuinely cares about people from a holistic standpoint. So before we bring her on with us, we do want to take a moment of silence just to acknowledge those who aren't with us. So please join us in a moment of silence. All right, we are back. So, Miss Danielle, I'm really excited about today's guest. I know you have a relationship with this guest as well. Did you want to just speak to that briefly before we introduce her?
Oh man, can we say the name now?
Go right ahead.
Okay. We 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 have the beautiful Fawn joining us today, and many of you all who are native to the Pittsburgh area probably know her because she knows everybody. But I was introduced to her at Freedom Corner, and let me tell you, a phenomenal woman that I have since relied on for numerous activities and actions out of the Marquis Jaylen Brown, Justice for Marquis Jaylen Brown, Justice for Jaylen camp. And she has consistently showed up and also in sticky situations. She was a person I could rely on. And when I needed to talk to someone about some confidential matters, I could rely on her and call her and get sound advice without worrying about it becoming a part of the what we call it, the gossip community. So, I appreciate her being a confidant. I appreciate her being a person that I can consult with on, activism matters. And I just appreciate her passion. She's oh my God, a dynamite woman, a passion. And everyone will get to experience that. She does so much in her community. Look at her. You know what I'm saying? She fly, Look at that red hair. Not us black folks can always rock different color hair, but look at that. She got that red hair going on really well. So, I look, Next, you don't have red hair today.
Welcome, Fawn. We're happy to have you with us. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you both for your kind words. I definitely feel the same way about both of you. So thank you all so much for having me.
Oh, no
Definitely. So, Fawn, was doing a little bit of research on your organization and on you, and there's so many things that I could say about who you are, but I want to leave that up to you to introduce yourself to the people. And as you're thinking about your introduction, as we are on episode 2 of the second season, which is the theme is from trauma to triumph. And that was one of the main reasons why I gravitated toward you and being a guest, because I know you don't just do the work, you have a story behind why you do the work, how you do the work, the consistency of it. So just keep that in mind as you talk to the people a little bit about who you are and some of those experiences that inspired you and influenced you to do the work. So I'll hand it off to you to do that.
Yes. Thank you again so much for having me today. So when you all sent the topic to me and it said from trauma to triumph, that really, really stuck out to me. And I really wanted to take the opportunity to really share my story. I don't think a lot of people know. And it's not that I haven't shared it in the past. I think what it really comes down to is the fact that I am so strong that a lot of people will listen, but not listen with those ears of really getting an understanding. So I just challenge everyone. I'm always with the calls to action to people when I really am speaking to really just look past the expectations that you have of me, as well as this notion that I'm magical or I have superpowers, because I don't. So just to really look past the strong Black woman expectation that is placed on myself and a lot of other Black women. So when I heard from trauma to triumph, my trauma really started for me in my childhood. So I was molested at a young age, and I really didn't remember it until I was 10 years old and my grandfather had passed away. So, in my adult age now, I know that when death happens, repressed memories come back. So I was 10 years old, and after my grandfather passed, the repressed memory came back of me being molested. And I really didn't know what to do with that. I was so young, and I was already going through the trauma of losing my grandfather. So what I did was I just like forgot about that. And I would take the memory, and I would physically take it and move it to the back of my head. And I will try not to think about it. I didn't tell anybody for 6 years. So for 6 years, I was very quiet about it. I didn't say a word. I would have episodes of acting out, just, crying or depression, but really didn't, associate the two. So when I was 16 years old, I was suicidal and I was definitely about to harm myself. I credit my mother with being so close to me and making it a comfortable relationship for me to come to her and tell her. So I was just at the point when I was 16 where I said, I can no longer do this. So I was literally sitting on like a roof because I was babysitting. So I was sitting on a roof and I was contemplating jumping off. So I said, you know what? I need to talk to my mom. So I called her like from where I was at. She came and got me. I told her what happened. And, she really, her and her husband, who was my stepfather, they really guided me through that process, got me into therapy. Were really understanding about, what happened and really wanted me to, come to some kind of a healing from that. So I definitely credit my mom with just saying, making, like I said, comfortable position for me to come to her and tell her. So with me being quiet about that for 6 years, I really do think that added to my passion with making sure that my voice was heard and so many others people's voices are heard because I was like quiet, for 6 years and I didn't say a word about it. So it's like, now I just can't shut the hell up. So that's definitely a really huge part of my trauma. Therapy was a really huge help with making sure that, and you don't get past something like that. It's not something that you move past. It's just something that you, learn how to manage your triggers and manage your trauma. So, as a Black person, of course, it's not like that's the only trauma I've ever had. Just being Black in general. Somebody asked the other day, I think it was on Soul of a Nation, when was the first time you ever realized you were Black? Well, for me, it was in grade school when we were reading that Tom Huck book and it kept saying the N-word. And I got upset with that. And this really started I guess you can say, my years of activism. So I went home and I said to my mom, I don't like it. It makes me feel weird. The other Black kids in the class don't like it. So she said, what you want to do about it? And I'm like a kid. I was like, what do you mean? So she set a meeting up with the principal and, I spoke and I said, I just don't like it. It doesn't make me feel good. So they took that book off the curriculum. So I said, wow. That's why I always credit my mom because she didn't just be like, oh, well, go upstairs. She said, what are you actually going to do about it? So I would say that definitely was traumatic because I did ask the man in class, the teacher, said, well, why do we have to keep saying it? Because he kept saying it. And he said, well, that's just what they did back in those days. So me and the other kids, and it's so funny because I know these people nowadays, they're looking at me and I'm like, a kid, like, what y'all want me to do? So that definitely, I would say, definitely started it. And I had to endure a lot of that just from then up until now. Just going to high school in McKeesport, me and my friends, we started a petition to get a Black history class. And it's crazy because we didn't get the class, but we got like a diversity committee that's still there today. But my daughter, who was in our youth chapter 2 years ago now, her and her friends had to sue McKeesport School District to get a Black student union. So as I sat there and I walked, them through that process, it was very traumatic and triggering because I really had to go through the same thing. So I said, wow, here we are years later going through the exact same thing in the exact same school district. So that trauma definitely guided me throughout life when I'm talking about racial trauma now. And then just the trauma of living in a community where I was losing a lot of relatives to gun violence, which really led to the development of Take Action Mon Valley. So we were founded in 2014 after my cousin Carlos Hudson and Jan Randolph were murdered here in McKeesport. Carlos's cousin, or my other co-founder May Hudson, had came to me and said, let's do something about it. In my journey into running for office, because I sat on council in McKeesport for 8 years, my journey to even running for office and to even wanting to get into, I would say, politics and activism really came from the background of all the trauma that I had been through, from the molestation and being quiet, from the racial trauma, and just the gaslighting that was put on me. The gaslighting that has, I would say, been drawn on me has gotten like national attention. So I'll say something, and the gaslighting from local elected officials to me it's really bad. Actually, I always like to categorize my time on city council as an abusive relationship, because I was the only one on there who I would say was progressive or radical. I think was a better way to describe myself. So anytime I would say something, the gaslighting was on like 150. It got to the point where I had to get my husband to be in the meetings when I was going to say something, because they react different when he was sitting literally in the front row. He'd have to be there, sitting there, looking at them for the violence. And violence isn't always physical, right? Most times it's mental and emotional. So when he was around, it would kind of be on a lower level. So all of that really led to development of Take Action Mon Valley. So when May came to me and she had went to a meeting in Pittsburgh and they were talking about homicides not being solved. So she said, let's do something here in the Mon Valley area. So that's what we did. So I would say all of that trauma really led to why I'm so passionate about what I do, making sure everybody's voices are heard. And outside of just being activism and all that, I am actually a mental health professional. So I've been in that field since 2002. So I'm trained in childhood trauma. I've been a family-based therapist. I've been an MST therapist. So I have that background. And I don't like to separate the two because I kind of think they go together with politics, activism, mental health, because what that really did was help me get some skills with just being able to engage people and really understand where people are at and really just meeting them. I would say meeting them, where they're at. So I appreciate you all for giving me the opportunity to share that story, because I just don't think a lot of people knew. And a lot of that is, and a lot of that is just like I suck at boundaries, right? So I just don't have good boundaries. And that's one thing I'm working on now in therapy, which has been clearly helpful. I've been in therapy on and off since high school, but I have a Black therapist. And I would say that this is the most beneficial therapeutic experience I've had, because I don't have to go around a lot and explain to her what I'm feeling, because she clearly gets it because she's Black. So I don't have to go around a lot in explaining that. So, yeah.
Yeah, we did a show not too long ago where we actually talked about the very issue of, the benefits of having a Black therapist compared to having, another, ethnic, not ethnic, another, race therapist, whether it's Hispanic or white or, whatever, Asian.
Mhm.
But, I'm happy that you said what you said, because in therapy, sometimes we spend so much time trying to explain ourselves that we don't really get to the core of the reason why we're there, because we have to kind of go through all of this fluff,
Yeah.
because I've experienced both white therapists and Black therapists, and I could tell you sometimes it takes away from the relationship and the authenticity of the relationship, because you're sitting there in your head space trying to figure out if this person really gets who you are, before you even open your mouth. Can they relate to you on a personal Black level?
Mm.
So, I'm happy that you said that, you have a Black therapist, and one of the benefits of that is that you don't feel like you have to go around issues, that part right there is taken care of, and you feel like you can dive right into with your reason why you're in therapy. So, and thank you for normalizing therapy too, by your longevity with it.
So, Fawn, you started to talk a little bit about your organization. Can you talk to us about what you're doing, some of the programs, and just give us a little bit of background on your organization?
Yes. So my organization is called Take Action Mon Valley. And we were founded in 2014. The co-founder was May Harriet Hudson. She's my cousin, and her son Carlos Hudson and Jan Randolph were murdered here in McKeesport in 2014. So May went to a meeting out in Pittsburgh that was called by Autumn Perkins. Shout out to Autumn. And Autumn put together meetings on We Need Justice Too, and she was focusing on the fact that the Wolf sisters were murdered in Pittsburgh, and the chief at the time, the Wolf sisters were white women. The chief at the time got on the news and said, "Well, we're going to find out who did this. We're going to put all of our resources into it," and they did it in like less than 3 days. So Autumn's point was, "What about us? And what about our homicides? And why can't we get the same attention?" So she did some meetings in Pittsburgh. May went and we did some out here in McKeesport, Mon Valley area. And what we noticed was that people were coming from all over the Mon Valley, so McKeesport, Duquesne, White Oak, Clare. So we had a lot of follow-up meetings, and we named it Take Action Mon Valley, with the mission to combat all forms of community violence through activism and organizing. So when we first started, we really were focused a lot on neighborhood violence. And then I would say we did a lot of research and policy papers. So more at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, we really started to shift to more of a social justice organization. We redefined community violence to include structural and systemic racism, and really started to do some research and understand that it was the social conditions created by structural and systemic racism that lead to neighborhood violence. So it really took I would say, a shift a little bit in our focus, and we still address all forms of violence, but that structural and systemic racism definitely is top because it literally leads to all the social conditions that we live in. So in 2018, we got a fiscal sponsor, One Hood. Shout out to One Hood, and they became our fiscal sponsor, and we really were able to expand a lot more. So how we take action is we take complaints from all over Allegheny County with, of course, a clear focus on the Mon Valley. And we do that because the Mon Valley is consistently left out of everything from resources, conversations, economic development. And people do that a lot when they're looking at bigger cities, and it just doesn't happen here in Allegheny County. I would say it happens across the world. But when you really look at Black liberation and wanting us all to be free, you can't just have a one city or bigger city approach to that. It has to be more of a county/region approach. So that's what we really do in Take Action Mon Valley, is look at the greater area and how we can affect change there. And I think that people don't really do that a lot in this field. And we do that because you have to understand how something is structured before you can break it down, really. So you have to understand what goes into that, what goes into development, and how that looks. So we do a lot of that in Take Action Mon Valley. So we take our complaints, and that's for any form of violence. Typically now we have 27. Most of them are police violence. We have some school violence. We have some housing injustice, transportation injustice. So people reach out to us. We take their complaint and we give them a plan of action. Sometimes that is just referring them somewhere. Sometimes it turns into an advocacy campaign. We do calls to action for them and protest. And protest doesn't always mean street protest. So that means sometimes we're doing call-in days. We have people call in, send emails, letter writing campaigns. So it just depends on the issue, but we take complaints. We also have chapters, which we're really focusing on rebuilding because COVID-19 really hurt our chapters a lot because a lot of people didn't have Zoom or access, I would say, to Zoom. So we're going to have to rebuild a lot of our chapters through our interest meetings, which we're going to have virtually. So that's going to be interesting. But we have chapters in McKeesport and Duquesne and East Pittsburgh. So we are really focused now on kind of rebuilding those chapters. And the way that we take action within our chapters, and this is where the expansion comes in, because now I'm able to do it full time, and I can really focus on doing the training with the people in the chapters, as well as community action plans, which look different per area, right? So McKeesport's might look different than Penn Hills or White Oak or wherever you're at, because we might have some of the same issues, but we don't all think the same. So everybody's experience should be valued differently. So through the chapters, we create community action plans, or CAPs, as we call them. We have a youth chapter that is very active. So we're so proud of our kids. They do virtual panels. They in the summer they did a protest on school police and McKeesport, and they have a CAP, or community action plan, and they're really now focused on police in schools as well as COVID-19, and they're going to do a panel on HBCUs because they pointed out to us that that's not really something that they hear over here in the Mon Valley. It's about HBCUs and how beneficial they are. I mean, I'm an HBCU grad, but nobody's really talking to them about that yet. Yep. So they're going to do a panel on that as well. So we have our chapters, we have our complaints, and then we have the several initiatives that we support. So that's anywhere from transportation rights to housing rights. We have a COVID-19 relief response initiative that we're doing. So we have a transportation assistance program, which really came out of COVID-19, because when COVID-19 first hit, a lot of people were focused on doing, I would say, food giveaways. Nobody's really doing nothing over here in the Mon Valley. And then when we couldn't get there, so we can't get to Pittsburgh, because sometimes it takes 2 to 3 buses. And then with COVID, it wasn't even safe to get on the bus. And at one time, they had cut the routes down. So when the bus got out here, there would be no spots for us to even get on the bus. So what we did was we give out up to $40 a month for people to get to anywhere they need to get to. You just have to live in the Mon Valley. The program should be open back up shortly. We had to get it funded because it kind of took off, I would say, when we first started. It really took off with just making sure that people got, their transportation assistance in. So that is how we take action. We have our initiatives, we have our chapters, we have our complaints. So with, I would say, the mental health aspect, that's definitely one of our initiatives, Black mental health. What we're really focused on now is trying to get some funding to have, I would say, therapists on call or more available to us. Trauma is a huge piece of Black liberation and doing activism or social justice work. I have seen it as a mental health professional. I have seen it just as an activist, in the unchecked trauma, the unmet trauma. And with Black people, what we do is we turn that inward against each other. So that's why there's so much bickering and so much inner fighting, because we're not dealing with our trauma. So what we would like to do and take action is have those therapists available to the people who make complaints to us. So when they call us, we can kind of connect them with a therapist, and we may give them a number, right? Here's a number, call, but typically they don't call. Life just gets in the way. Being able to afford it, being able to get there, have access to it is huge issues. So we would like to combat some of that just by having a therapist, available. I mean, not just to the people that make complaints, but the people in our chapters, our partners, and the people we work with. So when things do come up, it's not this, but it's more of a let's bring somebody in here to really address this, because the trauma literally, it smacks us in the face. I don't care what you're doing in this kind of work. It comes up, it's right there, and it guides everything that we do. And I think we really need to start addressing that, and really just look at who we are calling in to do that. I think that is wonderful that Black people are talking about therapy now, and that they're going to therapy, and that is in the conversations. But I do think that when we are referring people out, or when we're talking to therapists, they should be trained therapists in a certain area, if that's the area that you need addressed. So I think we do have to be careful with just, we all have lived experience, right? All of us do. And we're experts of our own pain. But if you're not trained in something, it's hard to give advice, because it can be dangerous.
Absolutely.
If you're not trained to give somebody advice on something. So, a pastor is not a therapist. Somebody in your family who's a therapist is not your therapist. So I have to do that a lot in my family. Like I am, I have been a therapist in the past, but like I can't be your therapist. Go out and get your own therapist. That person cannot, that person can't be me. And even in Take Action, me and my staff, we do that a lot. Let me connect you to somebody. because we can't be your therapist. That's not our role here. So I think we really have to start to have that conversation about who are we referring to and who are we considering these experts, because it really is dangerous if I'm
Right.
in crisis
And damaging.
and yeah, you're talking to somebody who isn't, because then it damages us, right? It
Yep.
re-triggers us, it re-traumas us, re-traumatizes us. And in this field, that is so important, because it's almost like trauma is, in my opinion, like it's almost like a way of life in the work that I do, I would say. I talk to families who have lost loved ones, and just sitting in that and hearing that, it's traumatic. Something just happened over here in McKeesport, and I had several breakdowns on live with the police and their response here, and thinking that they were going to kill somebody Black in McKeesport. And it was so crazy. And I think it goes back to something I said in the beginning. A couple people called, but the fact that, Black women are seen as being so strong, and I'm one of those women, people were like, "Oh, you're all right." And I was like, "No, I'm actually not all right." But the support system, so my husband's like, "Yeah, well, we need to call your therapist, because this is a lot for you, to have to follow these police around, make sure they're not killing anybody." And I just think we need to acknowledge that a lot more, especially when it comes to the workers and the people who are, who are dealing with it, and some of the stuff that comes at us. And it's okay to take a break. It's okay to seek therapy, and it's okay to tell somebody no, to not dump all of that on you. All of those things are okay, and that's definitely something I'm working on with the boundaries aspect, and making sure that I have better boundaries. Just not for take action, just for my life, and telling people, yes, telling people no, or just telling people, when I'm available, what Take Action Mon Valley can do, or when we can refer out to some of our wonderful partners that we work with. And definitely Julius and Dannielle, you are some of those people.
It's amazing when you're talking about being careful with making sure you have the right therapist. I shared oftentimes on this show that I have a master's in counseling psychology, but I refuse to go any further with it, because those tools I'm using on myself right now for my traumatic experience. And it's important to know that when you have skills, when you can be effective and when you can't be effective. I know I would put others in harm if if my own triggers and my trauma, my immediate, my very here and now trauma, is being what's the word we use a lot of time in therapy, transferred, on to the next person. It's another word, but and that's not healthy and that's not right. So even as a therapist, you have to know, when you can be effective and when you can't. And you better know when you're not effective or in your season of effectiveness, to be okay with stepping back and not continue to put yourself in a situation where you are causing more harm to your client than yourself. So these little sound bites, you got so many that I just I want to highlight, because I think we don't talk about that often, about when a therapist becomes ineffective. That's really real. We all have seasons, right? And we should know what our seasons are. Not that we need to have to be out of the loop for a while, but sometimes the therapists need therapy. So and we have to give ourselves permission, because we can get overwhelmed and burnt out quickly.
Yeah, Fawn and even Miss Dannielle, as y'all both are talking, two things came to mind for me. One, as an activist, I'll say for myself, I try to work myself out of my trauma, right? It's like if I can be busy enough, if I don't have to face it, and I just move on to the next family or assignment or project that I'm working on, then I don't have to feel it. And Fawn, I think what you did, and Miss Dannielle, you've shown us through your walk and your actions is that we have to stop and we have to tend to ourselves. Like that is our responsibility. That's our obligation with support from other people. And I think that as leaders, as activists, as organizers, it's really difficult to do that. I mean, I know some of the most impactful folks that do work within our space, but they are literally hurting and dying on the inside from that trauma that's been compounding because it becomes like difficult. Like Fawn, you said trauma is like a way of life because it's so deeply embedded in your work, and sometimes it gets difficult to press pause on that or to not try to, I'm speaking for myself, be everything for everybody. I have a really difficult time with that. And so going into the second point, something that both of y'all brought up is so powerful is that I feel like there's this transition that's happening within the Black community that we want to talk. We are talking more about therapy and we're getting mental health support, but I feel like there's also still a disconnect between what is the appropriate level of support, whether it be mental health support or behavioral health, which includes drug and alcohol treatment. What's appropriate for a certain instance, especially in the city of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County, where there's so many conversations happening, and probably in your area too, Miss Dannielle, around crisis intervention, right? So, how many times have we seen a crisis, like maybe a life or death crisis that happens within the Black community, mental health crisis, and we see some mental health people get tagged on Facebook? Now, I'll say sometimes I get tagged in these posts, and I'm like, I'm not what you need right now. I can help connect the dot, but that is a crisis situation that me as a you know administrator of services and coordinator of services, I haven't been a practicing therapist since, I don't know, 2014. So I'm with therapists all the time, but when people specifically are like, Julius, there's this crisis in the community, I'm like, oh, I could make connections, right? But I can't show up and deliver a certain level of crisis intervention that a trained clinical mental or behavioral health professional can do. So I say all that to say we need more education in the Black community to know when should you be contacting a crisis, someone for crisis intervention. Who should you be contacting? Who should you be contacting for family and marriage counseling? Who should you be contacting when you're struggling with depression and anxiety? I think because there aren't that many Black mental health professionals, we're like, tag Jessica Gurley, tag Erica Upshaw Givner, tag Kevin Jordan and ABS, and there aren't that many of us, but we do need to learn who we need to bring into these certain situations within the mental health space, and to Fawn's point, make sure we're not further traumatizing our people, because we bring in somebody who don't have the skill set to deal with somebody who just got murdered. Like that's not their skill set. They don't know how to deal with that. They're just a Black mental health professional.
Right. Or the space. I'm constantly tagged in those posts, and I'm expected to react. And like, how violent is that? Because you don't know what I'm doing at that moment. I mean, I've been out of town and gotten tagged, and like they'll keep tagging me or inbox me, and I'm like, I ain't even near what you expect me to do. And that's so violent to put that on we put that on each other, because I know in Take Action we have a process. This is how you reach out to us. This is how you contact us. So, but I kind of think that goes back to that conversation around boundaries and being able to communicate that. I love what you said, Julius, about working and not feeling. Just through therapy, I've learned that, I haven't been feeling since high school. I just don't allow myself to feel anything. I just move on to the next and move on to the next and, kind of move on to the next. So that's what that's what I'm working on now, is like really feeling that. But I think a lot of that just goes back to people being able to lower their expectations of myself and other Black women. I always say, don't make your strong friend repeat their story because you didn't hear them the first time. I've had to do that a lot because people don't hear it because they're like, "Oh, you got it. You're all right. You'll manage." But maybe I won't. Maybe I need a minute. Maybe I need a day. But that's okay, regardless of that. That's why I reject a lot of the strong Black women, or we're magical, or we got superpowers, or we're flying around here and stuff. Because we don't. Like, we don't have any of those things at all. That is, actually, a white supremacy technique that they use to make it seem like we are the greatest things in the world, as far as like they have these magical powers that we just don't have. And honestly, it's just too much. I reject a lot of those notions, but other people still put the expectations on me. It hasn't gone anywhere. Even though I reject it, it still hasn't gone anywhere. So I just have to continue to have those boundaries, but we have to accept each other's boundaries.
Absolutely.
And accept them, and be able to communicate to each other, when we're going through something, just love on each other.
Absolutely. You know what's powerful is you guys are dropping organizations and dropping names. That's one of the things that I love about Pittsburgh. It's a city, but man, the connectivity of everyone and being able to work together and to rely on different resources to help, if, like, for me, a new nonprofit in the city, right? But I can call you, Fawn. I can call Julius. It's a whole Ujima. I mean, the list goes on and on. Churches Macedonian, they showed up, big time for me. It's powerful. And I'm telling you, among Black people, you don't get that type of teamwork in other major cities. It's like everybody works in their own silo. But when something goes down, I can look up and say, "Oh, there go Fawn. Oh, I see Lakeisha. Oh, wow. I see, so and so." We all, somehow rise to the occasion together. I don't see it. I'm here in Washington, D.C. Now, granted, I spent more time, since last summer in Pittsburgh. I do activism work here, but because I was physically there, as long as I was there, I've been able to establish these relationships. And I'm sure they exist here in the city, but also what exists here in DC is politics. And don't get it twisted. Politics is very much a part of activism work here in the Washington, D.C. area too. So it's a harder system to crack into activism here as opposed to, there in Pittsburgh. And so, I just, when you all were name dropping, I was like, yeah, I know who they talking about. Gratitude. I work with them. Yes. So-and-so helped me when I had a problem, and it's just a beautiful thing to have that support system. And I think that too needs to be capitalized on even more. So it's the fact that for a lot of things that's broken, there is a lot of things that are working too.
Awesome. Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, I agree.
That's your perception, from coming out and coming in. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Miss Dannielle, that's an interesting perspective. I don't know if Fawn knows where I'm going, but I don't know if that's the narrative we always hear from local folks. I feel like sometimes we hear that it is disjointed, and there needs to be more of a collaborative framework in Pittsburgh. So it's interesting to hear you as you're coming in, right, and experiencing. I think you came in under some divinity, right, and something that was ordained. So you had some folks that were placed around you from a place of divinity, right? But not everyone is connected in that way to the divine. So I think that has something to do with it. And when people ask me, I kind of jokingly say this, but not really. They're like, "Well, what?" People like, "Well, what do you do? Like, what do you actually do at Still Smiling?" and I say, most days I feel like I'm a politician. Like most days I feel like, and I think to Fawn's point, when we talk about white supremacy and the way it shows up, like especially in a city like Pittsburgh and especially in Allegheny County, right, where with McKeesport and the Mon Valley, people are like, "Oh, that's over there."
Yeah,
That's McKee. It's right there. It's right next door, right? There are I know people who are going from the city of Pittsburgh that are going to McKeesport, or they live in the Mon Valley and are coming into the city. So to try to sort of differentiate and say, "Oh, well, we're not worried about that over here. We're worried about the city and our, whatever 90 neighborhoods in the city." Like, no, like the Mon Valley is us. We have an obligation at a resident level, political level, organizational, collaborative level. Like Still Smiling has an obligation to take action Mon Valley, like regardless of what neighborhoods we get grants to serve. Like if there's a need, we need to be collaborative and responsive to that need. So it is very interesting because people in Pittsburgh, I just saw somebody who was out of town the other day. They were somewhere in the South, and they were like, "Oh man, I'm never coming back to Pittsburgh. Like it is lit down here. People are smiling at you." And it's like, I think that sometimes Pittsburgh is kind of taken for granted when you're here for so long. But on the flip side of that coin, Miss Dannielle, there are a lot of silos. Like there are a lot of silos, and people are aware of that. Some people are trying to mend it, but there's some people who are not.
I think you bring a good point. Is I came under a realm of divinity, divineness, and I think that's the common factor that brought all these different groups to Freedom Corner, and who can't relate to a mother who is fighting for justice for their son, so that's a commonality, that kind of puts me in a weird place, but and allowed me to experience that, which probably is not the norm, but hey, I appreciated it because it was beautiful, seriously, from someone who came in not pre-exposed to, the politics, the silos, the different groups in Pittsburgh. So it allowed me to come in with a fresh, perspective, being a sponge, soaking it all in. And yeah, being there less than a year, but now having 8 months. I got there July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, 8 months now. Mm-hmm. I am starting to see things a little different, but I'm still encouraged among us. The problem that I have is dealing with our Caucasian, neighbors, and so I'm seeing a lot more on that level, that is, I would say, I don't experience in DC. It's not in your face like it is in Pittsburgh on that level. Because, I mean, if a teacher can tell the classroom it's okay to use a certain word, I'm like, is this 2021? Mm. And I'm like, so it's a lot of reminders in Pittsburgh that DC is so much progressive, in various areas that when I'm in Pittsburgh, and I'm like, y'all need to catch up. In other places are doing other things. They're not, treating people the way that you all are treating people. The division is real in Pittsburgh.
You know what they call us, Miss Dannielle? Pennsyltucky.
What?
Like Kentucky, Pennsyltucky, like backwards. Racism is hot here. It's there are a lot of rural areas. Like I tried to go to a Allegheny County park over the summer, and I couldn't. I didn't feel comfortable because it's in this, sort of Trump area, and I'm like, I'm trying to. Right here, I am as an activist and an organizer, trying to go and get some self care and step away from the work, but I go into this rural, open public park space, and you walk into a space and you see people, and you're just like, I ain't supposed to be here. Like I'm not supposed to be here. Right away if you are or you aren't. So I knew right away. So the point I'm trying to make is it's called Pennsyltucky because we got the racism. We were behind on a lot. But what I will say though is that, to your point, Ms. Dannielle, there are folks that are committed to coming together. There are the Fawns of the world, the Miss Danielles of the world. I mean, I could go on and on and on. The Lakeishas of the world. I mean, just you go on and on and on of these folks that have these, from trauma to triumph stories, and they have these living, breathing, flourishing vessels through their organizations that are changing not just local stuff, but we're trailblazers here in Pittsburgh. That's one thing I don't know that people really understand. Like, we're creating national and international models and frameworks for how to treat Black people, for how to show up for Black and brown communities. Like, that's happening in Pittsburgh, So I know we're winding down here, Fawn. I want to talk about what you need. What does your organization need, from money, volunteers, support? Like, what you need, speak that into existence with these last 8 minutes we got.
Yes. So we definitely always need donations to continue our work. What we're really focused on now is the Black Mental Health Initiative. So we're looking for donations, and I'll be writing some grants to add on that piece to have an organization or therapist kind of on call for our partners, for our chapters, and the people that make complaints. We definitely need volunteers as well, to do, letter writing campaigns, whenever we send emails and we do our phone call-in days. So volunteers is always something that's needed. You can go on our website, www.tamv.org, to make a donation, as well as to sign up and volunteer. There are several advocacy campaigns and initiatives that we are working on right now. So I just wanted to highlight a few of them. The first one is police violence. So we have an initiative and a coalition we put together a year ago, and it's called PAC, Policing Allegheny County Coalition. And in that coalition, what we really do is we look at policing Allegheny County as a whole and how we can really look at alternative ways to policing from bringing in community. So from that coalition, we're really focused on looking at how we can, I wouldn't say decrease police violence, but looking at policing Allegheny County from a different way. We'll be doing a panel on defunding on May 5th. You can always check our website and our social media for that. We're also highly supporting the family of Ramir Talley. So Ramir was murdered by police in the city of Wilkinsburg a year ago. The officer has still not been terminated by Wilkinsburg, and no charges have yet to be filed. So we are pushing heavy, and we will continue to push heavy to seek justice for Ramir Talley. So anybody that would like to help out with that would be greatly appreciated. That is a family that I definitely feel like we need to wrap our arms around more in this county, to make sure that that family gets some justice for Ramir Talley. We're also focused on, like I said, we have 27 complaints. What we did was we kind of group a lot of them together. So for McKeesport, we're really looking at, and I don't know if people are aware, but there was an officer shot over here in McKeesport. Thank God he survived. He was shot by Kobe Francis, but our issue was the response to that and how they over-policed us and locked down our city, and they were coming in and out of people's homes without warrants, just searching, looking for Kobe, putting guns at people. So working with some attorneys now to bring a lawsuit there. And we went to a council meeting to try to speak about that, but they locked the door on us. So we had to take them to court just to get access to the meeting. So we won that case, and we're waiting for them to reschedule a meeting so we can go. So that's definitely one thing we're working on. In Duquesne, there's issues with police violence as well. They recently arrested a Black elderly woman for having a meeting with the mayor.
Yeah.
Because they claimed that she violated COVID-19 regulations. It was masked, the door was shut. So the police came and actually arrested her. And on top of that, there were several other different complaints from the police in McKeesport, Duquesne, and West Mifflin. And that's one of the reasons why POC really exists. Because when you really look at police violence and police murder, it has happened outside of the city, but more in the county, because there really is no real accountability. You have to go through the chief of police, and that is it. We have no police review board, which is another thing we're pushing with county council. So we're working on the police review board. And just this week, actually, Family Paid and Medical Leave Act was vetoed by County Executive Rich Fitzgerald in a pandemic, nonetheless. So you'll see a lot of calls to action for that, as well as the police review board. So, and then Michelle. So Michelle Kinney is, as you all know, another mother of the movement, along with you, Mama Brown. And she just had a bad experience at the Burger King out of Norfolk Sales. So we're pushing that as well. The police responded, but not really in a healthy or even a kind of a way. And that really ties back into our police initiative around making sure there's some accountability, because that's another separate department, because we have over 110 separate police departments in Allegheny County. So with that being said, they really just run it like they're sheriffs, and they do whatever the hell they want to do. And that's where we really have to come in and use our voices with that. So those are, I would say, some of the advocacy campaigns, initiatives that we're working on and supporting, but we definitely always need donations and volunteers to do that. And anybody can go to our website to sign up. Thank you all again for having me and allowing me to share my story.
You know, it's my first time hearing your story at length like this. And I'm just like, you never know, Julius, people's background and their walk and their why, you know. And you know what you taught me, Fawn? You taught me to pause when I meet people and really take the time to understand their why. Because sometimes we jump right in, you know. And I know, I mean, I just had the foundation unveiling. When I saw Fawn, I gave her a hug, and the first thing I did, threw a mic at her. You know?
That's all right. That's all right. I was ready. I love you.
You know, but you know, just listening to her, I'm saying to myself, why did I know all of this before today? I've been with Fawn for a while now. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I'm grateful and humble because it taught me a lesson. It taught me that sometimes before you advance your agenda, get to know the person, ask them, why are you passionate? Why do you do what you do? You know, why? I'm thank you, Fawn. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo that, Fawn. I mean, the way that you showed up today and your level and depth of transparency, me and Miss Dannielle talked about that. We said, oh, it would be so amazing to have the community leaders, right? The activists that are in the work to come on and not only talk about their work, but talk about the why. And at least me, Miss Dannielle, I was like, well, I don't know if everybody's gonna want to do that. Like if everybody's gonna feel comfortable doing that, because I don't know about y'all, but there's some days, actually a lot of days, where I feel like, Julius, you can't show that level of emotion today. Like your team is looking to you, the people in the community are looking to you. You show that level of weakness. I'm using my air quotes because that's not how I perceive it, but that's how, white supremacy and all these other things trains you to believe that it's weakness. And I'm a very vulnerable guy, but there are still days where I'm like, I don't have it today. And I don't show that though. I'm just like, you gotta show up today. You can't not show up today. So I say all that to say, Fawn, the way you opened the door and welcomed us in and let the viewers in to you, to your story, I think it deserves everything. It deserves to be celebrated, acknowledged, uplifted. And we send all the good energy out to you and your work. It makes me so happy in my heart to hear both of y'all are doing work around mental health and Black mental health. I'm like that's such a powerful thing, and so like music to my soul and my ear. So I just want to uplift y'all, give y'all flowers, support these two phenomenal ladies and the work they're doing, their organizations, they're trailblazers, they're game changers. We appreciate y'all. We'll see y'all next week.
Wait, we gotta do our shout out real quick.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Love said we belong everywhere. We have to change our thinking. We all love Olivia Bennett.
Hey, Liv.
She said, "Hey, speak the truth, Fawn." And she also gave your website information, which is www.tamv.org. So we thank you for that, Natisha Washington. Love this conversation. Thank you all for your truth and insight. Definitely support Take Action Mon Valley. And a lot of our viewers come after the show because people work during the day, so you'll see a lot of comments. So we encourage people to go on YouTube and as well as ourselves to reply to people as they also comment after the fact there. But yeah, we love our guests, and we thank you all for supporting us each week as we are in a new season of From Trauma to Triumph. And it's that little dash in between, the little squiggly line. That's our lows and our peaks, because we all have them.
That was a better ending to the episode than what I had. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. And we will see y'all next week.
Thank you. Stay on, Vaughn.